Oh, I'm going to have to muscle through this one. I am dealing with a headache. I've already tried doing this twice before, so I'm keeping it. I don't care. Like it, hate it, deal with it. So, a lot of talk, a lot of rumors, a lot of hubbub with what's going on right now with AEW and MJF. Now, I'm going to make one pretty safe point before I continue with what I'm going to say. And this is for all the people out there who are convinced, 100% convinced, that this was a legitimate shoot. He went out there and he said everything unscripted. I want you to come here a little closer. You're an idiot. I cannot tell you how many people I have read comments from claiming that this was an entire shoot. This is a company that's on a major network, and you really think for 1 minute that they're going to let him out there and shoot like that? You're nuts. Now, do I think that there are parts of it that he went off script? Absolutely. Absolutely. But there's no way he went out there and said 100% all this, and it wasn't already approved of by Tony Khan. If it wasn't, they would have cut his mic, got the cameraman out of the ring, and they would have gone right to it. They would have gone to something else. They would have gone to the announce desk. Maybe even go to a commercial. I don't know, but I do know that this is definitely a work shoot type promo. With that being said, what do I personally think of it? I thought it was really good. Anyone who has been following MJF on Twitter knows that a lot of what's been going on as far as money and how he's been compensated in the company has been made public for everyone to see. And to be fair, both of these two have done a really good job playing it out, and this is definitely storyline. And if not, then there's going to be some lawsuits. So I don't really want to go to where it began. I want to say it started with MJF making comments talking about he's not getting paid, or no, I'm sorry. News broke that contract negotiations were not going his way. And then it announced in an interview with Tony Khan, he made some comments in regards to MJF that they're basically making it seem like he wasn't I'm trying to remember exactly because I don't have it sitting in front of me, but basically he made comments that you could determine that were not the greatest about him. Now, they weren't inflammatory, but they just were like, oh yeah, no, he's okay, I guess. And MJF, not hiding from stuff like that, had been commenting, well, now this was going for weeks. So, we get to Double or Nothing. He basically is squashed to Wardlow, and then we're done with that storyline. And, he comes out, he cuts the promo on Dynamite, and that's that. And we don't really know what's going to happen until this week, even if he is there this week. So, I think this is clearly some kind of storyline. I watched other wrestling commentators on YouTube talk about it, and, I heard one say, well, yeah, this is good, but, what's the draw? I'm like, the draw is the conflict. Because people are going to want to tune in. People are going to be paying attention on social media now more than ever to see what happens next. And the draw is what is going to happen next week. It does have that shock factor to it. Because a lot of what MJF said, it resonates pretty strongly with wrestling fans. Because it's very true that Khan has hired a lot of ex-WWE guys. And he's given them the money. He's given them the attention. He's given them what they wanted. But MJF was there since the beginning. And he's considered one of the pillars for a reason. So, they they wonder where this is going. And I'm like, well, clearly this is storyline. It's something to keep you interested. It's more eyes on the product, obviously. Talking about how Tony Khan's place is out there with the fans behind the guardrail, and to be honest, with the guy acting like he's basically living out his dream and, in be a GM mode on Raw versus SmackDown, you can make that comparison. So, where do I see this going immediately? I don't know. Obviously, this is going to go into some kind of storyline with him and Khan. I'd argue with Punk being out and still holding on to the championship, and them having an interim champion. I think this is a golden opportunity to kind of kill two birds with one stone. And I originally did a 30-minute video on this. I'm going to try and condense it down best I can. So, hear me out, and I'm going to fix this just a wee bit. There we go. So, in order to contain the chaos, and we'd have to assume that Tony Khan is an incredibly naive person, because a normal person would have heard that promo and say, "You're not going to talk to me like that, I'm going to suspend you." But we're talking about a guy who is basically being considered more of a fan with a ton of money who runs a company than an actual businessman. So, let's suspend disbelief for just a moment, and let's say, this next week on Dynamite, Khan comes out, he addresses the fans, he addresses what was said, and MJF comes out, and basically Khan says, the reason I'm not paying you what you want is because I don't see you bringing in the money, and to be perfectly honest with you, you can come in here and say what I allow you to say. It doesn't change the fact that you also wrestle only like 3 or 4 times a year. And there are guys who wrestle almost every single week. Tell me why you should be getting paid more than them when these guys are established all over the world. I feel like it would be very real, because they're keeping this real. Remember, a lot of storylines like this, there does exist a kernel of truth in there. So, I'm not going to try and do MJF. Only he can do himself. So, basically, they have their battle of words, and Khan, and basically the whole thing is MJF is saying, if I really am that much of a draw for your company, and I really am one of the most best viewed things to ever happen on your brand, and I am the reason why you had one ex-WWE guy come back after 7 years and have that be the most viewed thing going on at the time, and also put over someone else as one of your best new baby faces, it sure would be a shame if I were to take my skills onto another company and just put you 6 feet under. And Khan being, the guy who he's not a super heel, so he has no reason to overly punish him. He wants to accommodate people. So his idea is, he's like, oh, fine then, if you want what you want, how about we do this? We're having a battle royal to determine a new interim champion. Why don't I put you in that match? And if you win that match, not only do you get to become the new AEW interim champion, but you also will also renegotiate your contract. And from then on, I had this better planned out, but I really don't want to get too in-depth with it. Maybe we'll do another video on that. But MJF wins. He goes over. He wins in his dastardly heel ways. And then, basically, for the next 2 months, he wins, but he doesn't really win through meaningful ways. And, of course, Tony Khan is reluctant to want to pay him that, because he's like, you're not honoring the fact that you are a fighting champion, and you're not defending it, you're basically just holding on to it. And, he wins with help by Shawn Spears, and I did have a plan in there where This would also start turning Spears face. I think it's time that anything involving MJF and the Pinnacle is done. It's done. It's over with. If you heard that, that is my kid downstairs laughing like a crazy person, because why not? Losing my train of thought listening to her. Sorry. So what ends up happening is Punk comes back. He's got his belt in hand. MJF has his interim belt in hand. And it just culminates to, well, look where we are. MJF, you said that we weren't done. Well, it looks like our paths have crossed one final time. He goes, you're basically a placeholder champion while I'm gone. Well, now I'm back. So why don't you do the respectful thing? Because you know you're not going to win in a straightforward match. You have no one else in your corner anymore. You clearly can't do it on your own. Now, keep in mind, this ties into us turning Spears' face, because now he doesn't have any backup. And if you were paying attention to Dynamite, if you were paying attention to the show after Punk won the title, you noticed he came out with FTR. FTR normally would come out and help MJF. Well, ever since, FTR's won the Ring of Honor belts, and they've been wrestling more with Punk, they've kind of been turning a little more face, and okay, cool, that's cool. And then Wardlow had his big face turn, and he's now free. And during this, Sean Spears would get away from him and realize he's more than just a hired gun. He can offer more to the company, and there's like a little mini feud in there where, he still loses, but now he's got no one. He's coming out by himself, and Punk knows how to exploit that. And basically, these two have another war of words, and it culminates at the next pay-per-view. I don't know what it's called. I think it's Full Gear or Revolution. I don't know. I think it's Full Gear. And I don't know. I don't know how I do go on this one. I'd argue that this is also an opportunity to... You could either have Punk win, and you could argue this would be this would be the rubber match, because MJF has a victory over Punk, more than one, if you want to consider the one of the matches. And then Punk had his win in the dog collar match. So this, I guess, would be the rubber match. Punk finally wins. He unifies the interim and the current championship, and then MJF is nowhere to be found. I'd argue that hurts the company more than helps, because people like MJF, they have the gift of the promo, and when you have a babyface like Punk as your title holder who does have the ability to talk, you need something to contrast that. And that's what I feel like MJF is. Now, if MJF were to win, and I mean legitimately win, I'm not talking through shticks, I'm not saying they have to literally spam finishers, I'm saying they both eat each other's finishers, and then he catches Punk, like Punk goes to do his little elbow drop. He rolls on the inside, and he does a legit roll up pin. MJF wins that way, because this is wrestling. You literally don't have to beat them until they can't get up anymore. Like, people often forget, this is wrestling. You can also surprise your opponent and get them with the shock pin and get them that way. That's wrestling. That's something I really loved about early WCW wrestling, was how many times championships could be won because the unexpected babyface catches the bad guy in the roll-up attempt and gets the clean win, because that would happen. They weren't expecting that. So yeah, I figured that would give one of the pillars finally becomes the main title, main championship of the brand. And from there on, he kind of teeters the line between being an anti-hero or the anti-villain. He's kind of, instead of being full-on heel, He's now gone through his arc. He's relied on people to get his work done. He realizes that not only can he have the gift of gab, but he can actually back it up in the ring. And that is the, and I'm saying, and it would end like this. MJF wins. And as he's in shock a little bit, and like, you see it in his face, because MJF can also act really well. He's shocked that he got the clean win. He did it himself. He didn't need Wardlow or Spears or anyone to come out and help him. He did it himself. And he's kind of in the corner, just like in shock with the belt. The camera pans up over his shoulder, because they're doing like a tight shot of him in the corner with like him in the belt. And it kind of peers over his shoulder, and you see Punk standing there. MJF turns around thinking like, okay, what? And this time Punk offers his hand in respect. He's not doing it out of guilt. He's, no cheap remarks are made. He's like, no, you legit bested me. You show me you're more than just words. You're more than just a guy on the stick. You're more than just a minute-to-minute guy. You are a legit fighting champion. You have my respect. They shake hands. Maybe the little bro hug. I don't know. And then, just as Punk goes to get out of the ring, MJF kind of teases to go for the low blow. Punk kind of backs up. MJF's like, no, I got you. Just, I got my eyes on you. Something silly like that. Just to kind of, let people know that he's not going to be your Captain America of the brand. He's more or less going to be like your Deadpool or your Punisher, But that's what I think it could do. And for anyone thinking that's going to hurt Punk, remember, this is a guy who literally gets cheered in almost any stadium he's in, including Long Island. And I think he'll be just fine. I don't think he's someone who needs to be champion of AEW. I definitely think the name is more than the title. That doesn't say he can't have a title win again. But as of right now, capitalize while the iron is white hot and start doing more with your boy MJF. I'm not going to lie. Watching Punk in that title match, I'm like, this dude is seriously on borrowed time. And I know people are going to hear that and be super shocked. I hate to break it to you. He botched 2 buckshot lariats. And I'm sorry, but while he's a good wrestler, he hasn't had entirely clean matches. I mean, he's had botches in a lot of his matches, and I think a lot of it comes down to ability and age catching up with him. Yes, he can wrestle. He's also in his mid-40s. He also has a laundry list of physical problems, and if you remember his podcast when he was shooting on WWE, this dude was getting injured almost every single week, and he got himself injured when he was in UFC. I'd argue the only time he didn't get injured was when he was starring in movies or when he was writing Drax. So, with that said, he's definitely not going to be a long title holder. I can see him holding the belt for a little bit. I don't think he should be holding it for a long time. And that's because the fans aren't idiots. They see who's on TV and they're like, these are all guys that we can see become main title holders. And the cool thing with having 4 pay-per-views a year is that you can really span out the time it is to tell a story. Unlike WWE, where they have a show every single month, and some even more. So, I just think having MJF as a title holder grants more opportunities. I don't think it really hurts Punk. I think MJF has just slightly better title ability, and I'm reminded of something that Miz said when he was on that episode of Talking Smack with Daniel Bryan, because Daniel Bryan made the comment, like, if I could come back, I would. Well, maybe I go, when Miz says, well, then why don't you go work in the indies? If you love wrestling so much. You sit on here and you talk about how much you love wrestling, but then you go and get yourself injured. He's like, you love wrestling so much, and yet you look at what you keep doing to your body. He goes, there's a reason why I work the way I work and I don't get hurt. It's because I'm good at what I do. You talk about wrestling, but then you put yourself in a position where you're not able to wrestle. And I'm like, he makes a really good point. So, and that's kind of where I feel with Punk. He works good. Unfortunately, his matches do get sloppy, and I think that's just age catching up with him. And he's also not nearly as fast as a lot of people that he's trying to get in the ring with. Now, the problem with someone like with Page is that it's just styles like not complementing each other. Like him in his match with Dax was phenomenal. Him in his match with Penta was good, despite there being a botcher, but they were able to work that in the story. His match with Dustin was good. It was because those were more classic styles, I'd say, of wrestling. Whereas once you get into guys like Page, like that strikes and like and flips, and that's more flair than anything. Like I'm thinking more of like a Bryan Danielson when I'm thinking of Page, and like a guy like Omega who's like those really awesome like bomb moves and strikes. And while Punk can do those, I feel like it's a little slower. I feel like when you're watching someone slower work a similar style, it doesn't complement. Then on to say I'm not entertained. I love watching Punk. He was the reason I got back into wrestling in the early 2000s, and it sucked when he left. But anyway, that's just some thoughts I was having. I don't know. Let me know what your 2 cents are on the matter is. I think this is a golden opportunity to tell some amazing storylines. And again, for anyone that seriously thought that he went out there and said things that he was not allowed to say, you're dumb.